Hi guys, today we're going to be doing a mock draft because it's almost the end of the NFL season and the draft is coming up. So first on the clock is the Titans, who are in desperate need of a quarterback. I think the right guy would be Cam Moore for them because he's a really good quarterback and he was good for Miami. Next up is the Cleveland Browns, who could really use a quarterback and a running back, which could lead to Ashton Jeanty being drafted. But I think a quarterback would be the right way to go, where Sanders comes in as one of the elite quarterbacks for this team. Next up is the Giants, who are also really needing a quarterback, which means the third pick is going to be Gabriel. Another good quarterback, but this is where one of these two will be selected, and I think that one is going to be Travis Hunter. Next up is the Jaguars, who could really use some O-line. So I think the perfect thing to do here would select a center. So they also need a guard actually, and Tyler Brooker could do that thing for them. Next up is the Raiders, who are a mess on offense. They need a quarterback, a running back, and a wide receiver, but a quarterback would really help, and that's where Jalen could do this thing. Next up is the Jets, who could use some DBs, but they could also use some quarterbacks, but I think they will be selecting Will Johnson in the 7th pick. Next up is the Panthers, who could also use a D-line. That's where Mason will fill in that spot for them. Next up is the Saints, who could use a wide receiver. McMillan, he's still available, you should take him. Next up is the Bears, who need a running back, and Ashton Jeanty will come to the 10th pick in the draft to Chicago. Next up is the 49ers, who could use some O-line, and that's where Will Campbell will do the job. Next up is the Cowboys, who could use a running back and a wide receiver and a tackle, but I think a wide receiver would be the right thing to do, and that's where Matthew Golden will do the exact trick with a bunch of yards. So Golden will be selected to the Cowboys. Next up is the Dolphins. No doubt they're going to take Starks. Now it's the Colts, who could really use a tight end and an edge rusher, but one of these two would be picked for them, is what everyone else would think. I think they'll take Tyler Warren. Next up is the not so good Falcons, who could use an edge. Well, there you go. And next up is my Cardinals. They do not need D-line. They need an edge. Holy crap, that is available. This beast is still available. Holy crap. Look at how much tackles he got sacks in year 2. He had a lot of good, but 87.1 overall grade would be perfect for the Cardinals to select James Pierce Jr. Next up is the Bengals, who could also use a wide receiver, and Burden will do the job. Next up is the Seahawks, who could use a center and a guard and an edge and a linebacker. But I think the right thing to do here is select Jason Majors. Next up is the Bucks, who could use a DB and a linebacker and an edge, which Shimmer will come in for. Next up is the Broncos. They could really use a wide receiver. They could also really use some tight end and linebackers and safety. But Emeka Ikechukwu is still available. He had some pretty good years with Ohio State. That's where he's going to step in. Next up is the Steelers, who could really use a quarterback. And Will Howard, who just won himself a national championship. He's going to fight for a Super Bowl on Pittsburgh. Next up is the Chargers, who could use a running back. Not a lot of those, but Cam. Great running back. Next up is the Packers, who could use a wide receiver. I think they'll take probably Savon Williams. And now I got the Vikings, who also could use a running back. And that's where Hampton, who just lost and got second place, which is the worst thing to get. Next up is Higgins, Texans, who are probably going to take a wide receiver with the 25th pick, and I think that's going to be Higgins or Xavier, but it's going to be Xavier. Next up are the LA Rams, who will use a tight end. Not a lot of tight ends, but Loveland is going to love the Rams. Next up is the Ravens, who need a wide receiver and a cornerback, but I think the right thing to do is select Barron. Next up is the Lions, who need a center and a guard. And that's where Tate will come in. Next up is the Commanders, who could use a wide receiver. I think we know that. And that's where Jaden Higgins will be selected. Next up are the Bills, who could also use a wide receiver. And who would the Bills select? They will draft a linebacker and be stupid because they need a linebacker. Knight Jr. is going to the Bills. Next up is the Eagles, who have the 31st draft pick in the draft, who could use a wide receiver, which is going to be one of these two, so we'll just go eeny, meeny, miny, you're selected. Next up is the Chiefs, who are debating with one of these two, and I think Josh will do the thing. So let's see what this draft will look like. The first pick, it's going to be Cam Ward. The second pick, it's going to be Sanders, Gabriel, Hunter, Booker, Miller, Johnson, Mason, McMillan, Ashton Genty, Will Campbell, Matthew Golden, Starks, Tyler Warren, Abdul Carter, James Pierce Jr. Then we got Luther Bird in the third, Jake Majors, Shim Stret, Emeka Egbuka, Will Howard, Cam Scatable, Savon Williams, Omarin Hampton, Xavier Restrepo, Colston Loveland, Jade Byrne, and then take Ratelage, Jalen Higgins, DeMarcus Knight Jr., Alec Ayomanor, and Josh Emmons. I probably said 99% of these names wrong, but that is it for this video. Bye bye.